If it is Thursday, then it is fishing and hunting today. And with no further ado, I have none other than the pleasure of bringing to you at the top of this hour one of the greatest in the game. That would be Mr. J. Cripp. And we have the luxury of having on none other than from the great state of Ohio, wildlife biologist Mr. Mark Wiley. How you guys doing today?
Good. Good, Sydney. I know Mark's doing well. Mark, how you been, bud?
I've been doing well, Jerry. It's a pleasure to talk with you both today.
How do you like that intro that Sydney gave you? I mean, pretty soon we'll be doing the new chief of wildlife for Ohio, Mark Wiley. How would that be?
Hey, that's all right. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. But well, I tell you what, can you believe we're already through another turkey season? Do these seasons with you, do they seem like they come quicker and are over quicker, or what?
Jerry, it's not just the seasons. It sure seems like as I get older, time just moves faster and faster.
And then
somebody had warned me about that.
And then when you got a couple of little ones to chase around, it makes you even go quicker, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's unbelievable. I know. It's absolutely unbelievable. I'm serious. I cannot believe here we are. Next week we're going to be mid-June already. Summer's short enough. I mean, it's only 90 days, and before you know it, it's going to be snowing here. Is that too quick?
That's too quick, but you are right. I'm already thinking about fall, and I don't know why I do that, but it just tends to happen.
Well, the nature of the business you're in, too, with devoting a lot of your time to being a forest bird biologist for the state of Ohio, you sort of have a tendency to think after spring season, you get ready for the fall season, which, primarily for you got Joe up there now with quail and pheasant, but with you, with our grass here in Ohio and our fall turkey, that keeps you busy too. But, well, I guess we got to talk a little bit, my friend, about how this season was this year. I don't know, if we do the old put it on the scale of 1 to 10, or can we just put it on were you pleased with the way it turned out, or a little bit disappointed with the way it turned out? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if I'm ready to put it on the scale of 1 to 10. There's so many variables there. What I will tell you, Jerry, is we expected harvest to be down this year. We expected a below average harvest total. All of our population indices were telling us that turkey numbers were likely going to be low for spring 2021. They came in a little lower than I expected. I will admit that. I hate giving those predictions in the beginning of the season. Folks always want me to put, well, what do you think the harvest will be? And that's one of the most nerve-wracking things about the job, is to try to make that sort of prediction. And I was a little bit high in my prediction for 2021. And there's a couple things going on there. As I mentioned, we do believe bird numbers were down. And I think hunters would verify that. They said they were seeing fewer birds and they were hearing less gobbling than they're accustomed to, at least in recent years. But then also we had fewer hunters out there. We issued about 7,000 fewer permits. It was about a 10% decrease in permits issued from 2020. And so we had fewer hunters out there with a roughly 20% success rate. If we had those additional 7,000 hunters or 7,000 permits, we might have seen a harvest number a little closer to what we're used to, up above 16,000 for a spring.
And I think, too, we talked about the fact that last year in 20 you had a spike increase, if you will, in permits because of people being out of work because of the virus. And this year, probably is reflected, what do you think, a little bit in that 7,000 down, and maybe some of those people back to work, and that brings in the old big deal why we can't do the outdoor things we want to do, or lack of time, back to work, no time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It was last year, 2020, was an unusual spring for so many reasons, but if we focus solely on turkey hunting, we had actually a spike in turkey permits issued in 2020. We jumped up. We'd been on a downward trend for total permits issued for almost 20 years. And we went from about 63,000 permits issued in 2019 to 68,000 permits issued in 2020. And if you recall, that was with restrictions on non-resident hunters. We issued very few non-resident permits last year, but still had a pretty notable spike in participation. And so actually last year, I in my predictions, last year's harvest was higher than I predicted for the 2020 season, and in large part because we had additional hunters in the field, likely for the reasons you described. It's as unfortunate as the circumstances are surrounding the pandemic and societal restrictions and restrictions on school and work and activities and so forth. Maybe a tiny little silver lining there was that it appears a few more folks were able to get out into the turkey woods and pursue wild turkey in Ohio.
Well, and really, you can't gauge how many you're going to be down in a given year. I mean, if somebody would say to you, okay, you had that nice spike last year, figure in the factor, and you can guesstimate, sure. If you looked at that figure, you had 68,000 with the spike in 20, and here we come this year, 61 and some change right around in that area. Would that be something that you could say, okay, would you guess, maybe would be a better way to put this, would you have guessed, Mark, that you'd be down 10% for this year from last as far as permit sales?
Yeah, I think you could have. And Jerry, if you look at a graph of the permits issued over the last 20 years, it's a pretty steady decline. You can draw a straight line downward, unfortunately, and line up most years from 2000 on, and those permits have been declining steadily, 2,000 to 4,000 permits lower each year. And actually 2020, go ahead, Jerry.
No, I was just saying low to that number, 2,000 to 4,000 down. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. It's and the reason I bring that up, I mean, we're all aware that the hunter participation has had a fairly gradual decline, but a steady decline in recent years. Turkey hunting is no exception. But the reason I bring that up is 2021, our permit total for 2021 falls right on that line. It matches the pattern for the last 20 years pretty well. The unusual year is actually last year, where we saw the increase. And so the circumstances surrounding, as we discussed, the circumstances surrounding 2020 certainly could not have been predicted. That is the unusual year when you look at the patterns. And we would certainly love to see this pattern change for many reasons, but 2021 was a pretty typical year when you look at the declines in hunter participation for spring turkey hunting.
Well, I'll say you what, Mark, that is very concerning to have a steady decline over a 20-year period, which means this steady decline started in 2001. Was that not the year of 9/11, that fall of 2001?
I think you're right, yes.
If that had any factor in that at all, I really don't know. I wouldn't see how it would or why it should, but you never know human nature and what people's thoughts are. But to have that kind of a decline, and what would you say your percentages? You're looking at have you lost in that period? Have you lost we'll guesstimate, have you lost 60,000 turkey permits?
Not quite that number. Our peak was actually in 2002. We issued 98,000 permits.
Okay.
So as you mentioned, this past year we were at 61,000. So 37,000 roughly down from our peak. Now, of course, that includes second permits. That's not 98,000 hunters necessarily, but also include, to muddy the water even further, in Ohio, of course, landowners hunting on their own land aren't required to get a permit ahead of the season. So we don't know how many landowner hunters might be out there, and we don't know the pattern of landowner hunting. But if we look solely at permits, from the peak in 2002, we're down well over 30,000 permits.
How does that match up with the Ohio hunting license sale, just our regular hunting license sales? Have they declined about the same percentage over that period, do you think?
Jerry, that is a very good question. I mean, I know that we have experienced long-term declines, and many in the division have worked very hard. We've got some really skilled staff in hunter recruitment and retention, reactivation. But I do not know. I don't know. I'm going to make a note to look into whether turkey hunting, that decline has exceeded the general trend for hunting license sales, or whether we're declining a little more gradually. I want to believe that the turkey hunter decline has been more gradual, because turkey numbers have been good in recent years, much like deer numbers. Now, 2021, of course, as I mentioned, we were down, and we can go into the reasons behind that. If you wish, we've had, unfortunately, 3 consecutive bad reproductive years, 2017, 2018, and 2019, according to the division's Poult Index, which is it's a citizen science-driven index where we request observations of wild turkey from the public. Our staff issue observations through their daily duties as well, but that's during the months of July and August, when we expect poults to be, half grown, 3/4 grown. Their survival rate at that size, at that time of summer, is far better than it is right now. Of course, we've got poults on the ground right now, but they're just little fluff balls with unfortunately, a fairly low survival rate. So we wait until July and August to collect those observations, and then we develop an index, which is essentially the average number of poults per hen observed. And in a typical, if you look at the past 20 years, poult numbers go up and poult numbers go down. We've got a pretty, our long-term average is right around 2.6 poults per hen, 2.7. And over the past 20 years, one year will be up and one year will be down, and then the next year we may be steady or up or down, but there's a lot of fluctuation there, and in part it's because those poult numbers, nest success, and poult survival is tied in large part to weather during the early part of the brood rearing period and during the nesting period. So those nests and very young poults are susceptible to inclement weather during the spring. And if you have good weather conditions, generally poult numbers do pretty well. If you have poor weather conditions, generally those poult numbers are poor. And this is I mentioned 2017, 2018, 2019 were all below average. We have not had in that index 3 consecutive below average years like that in the past 20 years. So So this was an unusual event, and as I mentioned, as far as we know, those numbers are most influenced by weather during the nesting season. But of course, we recognize there are any number of factors that impact poults, predation, disease, and so forth. But we're not aware of any major issues with either of those factors that would have contributed to the low poult numbers in 2017, 2018, 2019.
If you had to guess an average age of a turkey hunter here in Ohio, excluding the youth, we'll take them out of this factor because they have to opt out at 17, 18 anyway. But excluding that, if you had to just take a guess at what you think the average age of our hunter here in Ohio would be, what do you think that average age would be for turkey?
The average for turkey, I would put that in the range of late 50s, early 60s, and it would be a similar trend for the license sales. Yeah, and it's been a while since I've seen some of the analyses from our license department of average hunter age, but it does appear that in Ohio and even other places, the average age of hunters is advancing. The average age is older and older, and there are a number of reasons for that. I mean, poor recruitment for young hunters. I think as a father of three, youngsters have a lot of things pulling their attention in different ways, and despite our best efforts, we can't force interest in the outdoors or in wildlife or in hunting and fishing. The division has some excellent resources to encourage. We've got to encourage youth participation. We've got youth seasons. We've got youth lottery opportunities, youth tags, youth permits. Our apprentice license allows folks to get into the field with a licensed hunter without going through the hunter safety course. So there are any number of tools out there to encourage folks to give this a try and to see if it's something that interests them. But there's just so much out there, Jerry, which you're well aware. There's so much pulling at our time. And I wonder if the spike in licenses that we saw in 2020 wasn't a little bit of a reminder that when we all have a little more free time on our hands, as unfortunate as that situation was, we have the ability to return to some of the things that we're passionate about, like turkey hunting.
Yeah, that was the big factor is time. There's no question about it, Mark. That is the biggest factor in any pursuit as far as hobby time or whatever you want to call it. Leisure time is the time factor. And there's no way around that factor. And how to make that difference, it's hard to do. And I think what you want to do is maybe market to the empty nester crowd, because, we're looking at that average age you have really mirrors what the hunting license average age is. But the scary part of that is if we've got an average age between that mid-50s to 60 in that frame for an average age, guess what? There's quite a few of those 65, 70 plus people out there that are really holding some of this together in some cases, and they're not going to be afield much many more years. And we lose them. I'm afraid what's going to happen when we lose that age group, Mark, we're going to lose them all at once.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly hope not. But hunters I know in their 70s and 80s, it certainly becomes a challenge to stay in the field with physical limitations and so forth. It's a little like having an old bird dog. You see that the drive is still there, but maybe the legs aren't under them anymore.
Yep.
And so I think you may be right there, Jerry. As this pattern continues, we may see a dramatic change in hunter numbers in coming decades.
Yeah, I'd say probably in 10 years, because you're looking at this baby boomer crowd are going to be in that age group, and plus they're going to be that 80 crowd, 75 plus crowd in there. Give them 10 years, 15 years max, somewhere in there. It's going to be in that time frame for sure. And you, without bringing, and I know the programs are there for people to get involved. I certainly don't want to see where we're trending. And somebody told me this, it's probably true. Without turkey tags and without deer tags, we lose 85% of our hunters right now today as far as license sales. Do you think that's about right? 85%?
Certainly, with deer, I forget the exact percentage, but the vast majority of Ohio hunters are pursuing deer. I would guess it's in excess of 80%, certainly. With turkey, it's down more toward 20-25% of our hunters. We estimate maybe if we issue 61,000 permits, again, we don't have a good estimate of landowner hunters, but I typically will buffer that permit number by 10,000 or so, and assume that we've got some landowner hunters out there without permits that are pursuing turkey. So maybe 70,000 wild turkey hunters in the state in a typical year, at least recent years.
I'll tell you, I've gone over this with Malkovich quite a few times. I don't know if you and I have talked about it or not, but I think it's worth talking about again. We need to come up with a way. And I'm a private landowner too, and I private land hunt my own land. I'm not much of a deer hunter. When I do deer hunt, I just hunt here. I don't go out and hunt deer anywhere else. I'm just not that much of a deer hunter. I'm a bird hunter and a waterfowl hunter. And to me, we've got to come up with a way to make it mandatory that people that take deer and turkey on their own private land must report that animal or that bird to division so we can get an accurate account to what's going on. Issue a license somehow, some way. They don't have to pay for it, but make sure they follow the other requirements that we all do. You tag that bird, tag that deer, and get it reported in that certain time frame. And we all have to do that, even as private landowners, so you've got an exact count of what's going on.
You're right. And landowners do have, they are required to report their harvest. Mm-hmm. But
they don't, Mark.
Well, I mean, then we're getting into a law enforcement issue.
Right.
And people, I want to believe that people are following the law, and I want to believe that in those hopefully rare cases where they're not, that folks are contacting law enforcement as appropriate. But what concerns me, Jerry, is when I issue hunter surveys and so forth, I feel bad. I think that hunters are eager to share their experience and their opinion on turkey hunting regulations and their opinion of the turkey season, which is why we issue postseason surveys for a variety of species. But most recently, we distributed the Turkey Hunter Survey, and unfortunately, I have no way of contacting those landowner hunters because we select our survey recipients out of the pool of folks that buy a turkey permit. So I'm certain there are probably landowner hunters out there that would like to participate in the survey, and I have no good way of contacting them, even if they're legally hunting on their own property with no turkey permit and submit their harvest legally. So it's looking at it from my perspective only. I mean, I understand why we have our landowner rules in place, and I think that there is value in them. But but there are just a few examples where I wish it was easier to, from a biological standpoint, from the biologist standpoint, to know who is out there turkey hunting, what the trends are in their participation, and to be able to contact them and get their opinion, so that when I provide this information to administrators within the division or to the Wildlife Council, when they're considering future regulations, that those landowner hunters are represented.
I agree. And accurate counts, I think, make a big difference. Mark, you probably are much more aware of that than I, that's for sure. Here's another part of that mix, too, that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's people that are buying or leasing property now, and hunting, having that as their deer camp, maybe not so much a turkey camp, but definitely this deer camp trend, doing that where they'll go to 10, 15, 20 acres or whatever, go together and buy it. You really lose that info, too, because once they're a landowner, they're not required to buy that license anymore. So those deer are now out of the mix. Those turkey are now out of that mix, too, because they've now become landowners.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make a good point that there are certainly changing patterns of land ownership, and certainly hunting leases. We don't, I suppose I shouldn't say we and speak for the entire division. I'm certain we have staff who are fairly well versed in those trends. I am not, unfortunately. That's not something that we typically ask of our hunters to identify. We ask if they're hunting private land, but we don't ask in detail, is that private land that has been leased or private land in which you've just gained permission through other means. I know we've done that in a few unique situations as we try to better understand hunter access to private land. But that's something, as you said, that's something that we would love to have better data on and to better understand, so we can assist hunters in increasing hunter access to private land.
What do you think your participation, this is just a guess, how do you think the female participation is with turkey hunters here in Ohio? You think we've got a few?
We do. Certainly I see in the harvest data, but it's not something that I typically look at and summarize. So I can't tell you if female participation in turkey hunting is growing, or if harvest by female hunters is growing. But certainly when you talk to our customer engagement staff, they recognize that the demographics of hunting are changing, and not only are the types of individuals that are interested in hunting changing, but age groups and people's reasons for hunting are changing. Interest in food, or locally sourced food and that sort of thing is a growing trend, apparently, and so it will be interesting to see. I tend to bury my head in the turkey data, and the division is very fortunate to have folks in their license group that can bury their head in the human data and try to glean out those patterns and trends.
Mark, now your survey that you do, when does that go out?
So we typically issue surveys right after the season ends, and that way the hunter that receives the survey, and they're typically sent to a random selection of hunters. That way we hopefully have a representative sample of the full turkey population. I think our turkey hunters would probably get tired of filling out surveys if we sent a survey to every single turkey hunter every year. So we try to take a small sample of the turkey hunters from each year and again, that they're randomly selected. So each year, if you buy a spring turkey permit, you would have the same chance of being selected. And then we send those out. Typically, we give hunters a warning ahead of the season or early in the season, and we say, hey, you'll receive an email that says, hey, you've been selected for this voluntary survey. And we let folks know what sort of questions will be on the survey, because there's often questions about hunter activity that a lot of folks might not recall at the end of the season. How many days did you hunt? How many hours did you hunt? And so forth. So we send that notice early in the season just so folks can maybe jot down some notes if they wish. And then when they receive the survey at the end of the season, they hopefully can record accurate information on their hunting activity. But typically surveys are sent at the end of a season. We did have a survey early this year to a separate sample of turkey hunters, and that was because of a few regulation changes that have happened recently, namely the move to a Saturday opener. We had some hunter concern about crowding and so forth. We hope to gather some opinion data on how folks felt about the Saturday opener. It appears, based on past questions, folks were really happy to have the Saturday opener this year. But we wanted to, because of the concern that a few folks had, that maybe it would be a little more crowded in the turkey woods with the Saturday opener, we wanted to issue a separate survey and try to gather some of that information too.
Well, I think any time we can give hunters more time in the field, I think it's a great idea, and I'm sure they're happy with that, and they probably hope that continues, that Saturday or that weekend opener as we go into the future seasons. I think it's a neat thing, too, that we've extended our all-day hunt now for right after the first week instead of it used to be 2 weeks. I'm a big fan of that roost hunt, so I think more people need to hunt that. I think they'd be very, very pleasantly surprised. There's a very good possibility of being able to bird a bag on that roost hunt for sure. And I think it's underutilized right now. But that could be another factor with that, too. People buy one tag, they've already taken their bird, they don't have to hunt the roost hunt. But as your season goes on, and you've not filled that tag yet, or if you filled a tag and bought another one that needs to be filled, that roost hunt can be a very, very good way to get that accomplished, that's for sure. What do you look for, Mark, as an average for returns on your surveys? What do you consider a good average return on your survey?
Yeah, certainly. I am spoiled in that turkey hunters seem to as I mentioned, want to share their information, and they appear to be far more willing to participate, which is a great thing, than a lot of other hunters. So our typical response rate approaches about 25%. So if we send out 4 surveys, we're getting 1 back, which I know doesn't seem like a great return rate, but for some surveys that are sent out, division and otherwise, they're often fortunate to have even a 10% response rate, and we understand that. Certainly, we all get a lot of surveys, get a lot of emails, get a lot of phone calls or letters in the mail. As I mentioned, I'm very glad that turkey hunters in Ohio seem to value the resource, value the opportunity, and recognize that providing their data is important. So I'm very thankful to Ohio turkey hunters for that reason.
That's a tremendous response what you get. That's great when you consider an average for a national campaign on a direct mail is they consider 2% good. So your 20 plus is extremely good for sure. Now you use a mix too of both regular mail and email, don't you?
We have in the past. Most recently, it's been solely an email survey, okay. and we recognize that's not gonna, That's not going to reach every single hunter, but certainly the percentage, the proportion of our hunters with a valid email address associated with their license has been growing, and in part that was some of the motivation to make that change. Now, for some of our other surveys, like our small game survey, where we know the proportion of hunters pursuing some of those species, the proportion with email addresses is lower. We've tried to continue with the mail survey where possible. But the logistics of a hard copy mail survey, it's a much more tedious task. It's much more costly for various reasons than being able to put together some of these internet surveys.
Well, great response, my friend, for the one that you're doing. And here's an interesting thing for our listeners to ponder too about the importance of hunter feedback and the importance of surveys, etc., is the fact that I would think hunter feedback and maybe even the survey had a lot to do with that new little northeast turkey zone we got here in Ohio. Without hunter feedback, we may never have gotten that.
You're absolutely correct. I have used the northeast zone, the circumstances, the history of that change as an example of the importance of hunter feedback numerous times. We had hunters that for some time, and Jerry, I know you know enough turkey hunters to be aware that most are chomping at the bit to start the season very, very early in the spring. Well, in that northeast corner of the state, we had a notable number of hunters who were making the comment that they felt the season was too early in that corner, and so that stood out certainly to have hunters saying, "Hey, we think this season is a little too early for the resource." That led to a research project, a nesting study in 2015 and 2016. And we did determine that the nesting dates were a little bit later in that part of the state than the dates that we were using to establish the statewide season. And that was sufficient biological justification to make a change for those 5 counties. And we did so shortly thereafter with the establishment of the Northeast Zone in 2017. So, I mean, that's full circle. That's hunters letting the agency know their concerns, the agency gathering the biological data to verify the hunters' concerns, and then making a regulation change to make a more suitable season, a more appropriate season for that corner of the state.
Perfect. Quick little break, Mark. We're going to take that little break. Sydney, let's go ahead and we'll do that NBA update, this little segment here, this little break here quick. We'll come back on the other side. We'll continue with Mark. We'll get a little quick breakdown and what region of the state maybe was better than others, and see if the 17-year bug may help grow some of these turkey poults. We'll find that out with Mark right after this.
And this is your Fishing and Hunting Today weather update. We're currently right now, if you're in the Midwest, you're in the high 70s or low 80s. If you head down south, or actually no, I'll start with the East Coast first. If you want to go over to the East Coast, we're on the New York coast area, you're in the light 70, 73 degrees to be exact. New Orleans is also, with a little bit of thunder and rain, 88 degrees. Now, if we would like to go across the ocean, we go to France, you're in the 60, 64 degrees. We also, now, Cuba, you're 75, that's pretty normal for that area of the world. Hong Kong, 86 degrees. Also, Rio de Janeiro, 73 degrees. Come back to the U.S., you get to Philadelphia, you're in 70, 73 degrees. Houston, Texas, 88 degrees. Now, if you're in Canada, Ottawa area to be exact, getting 68. Istanbul, Turkey, 66 degrees. And then we didn't forget about Israel. If you're in Jerusalem right now listening, 72 degrees. Then I'd also like to touch base, as Jerry said, on the NBA. Currently right now, you have the Nets playing the Bucks, and they're in quarter two. Right now, the score is 30-33, Nets up. They might just sweep the Bucks from, they lead basically two. This would be their third win, so it almost would be a sweep pretty soon. Now, the LA Clippers are playing the Utah Jazz tonight at 10 o'clock. Make sure you guys watch for that. Right now, the Jazz lead the series 1-0 pretty much. And back to you, Jerry.
Thank you, Sidney. Good update. We do got a little weather around the world because with these podcasts here, we don't know where people may be hearing us because this is heard on many different platforms around the little world. So there you go. I want to mention real quick before we get back to Mark, federal premium ammunition. I always like to say shoot often, shoot lots, get out and enjoy now this time of year the range. And I tell people too, our season's we wrap up turkey season. It's time to go to the range. And we wrap up our turkey seasons, give you the month of May when we finish it up. The rest of that month to get your equipment put away as far as your hunting equipment, maybe do a little bit of hunting equipment maintenance, if you will. And then get ready for June through August to get to the range. And shoot all the shotgun disciplines if you can. Shoot skeet, sporting clays, and also trap. And if you just did 100 rounds a month, that would give you 300 rounds through the summer. Now, granted, we're having some ammo issues with maybe even being able to find some ammo. I'll touch on that here with you in a second. But if you do that throughout the summer months, come September 1st, the dove opener and that quick little bird called the teal comes around in September also. You may find that you're not going to have quite as many misses because you may not be shooting at as many of these birds and winding up missing them from being too late on that swing and shooting behind the bird. Very rarely are you going to miss leading the bird too far. So the skeets are perfect. The high tower, low tower is a perfect way to practice up the dove too. So shotgun time is right now range time, June through August. And get out there. And Federal's got a great lineup of target ammo too, by the way, all the way from gold medal to their top gun and everything in between as far as target loads. Now, as far as the ammo shortages going on and continue to seem to be going on, I recommend to everybody right now, no matter what your seasons that you enjoy shotgun hunting with and needing shotgun shells to do that with, when you see them, go ahead and buy maybe an extra box, an extra two. Don't hoard. That we don't need to hoard. That's part of our problem we've got now. I'm sure most of the ammo dealers that you're going to find now today are going to have a limit on the number of boxes of shells. I may be wrong, or maybe they don't, but if not, we're going to probably see it here before too long as to the number of boxes of shells that you can buy. So when you see it, I recommend buy at least an extra box or two if you can, and just try and get an idea what you think you're going to need for that individual season coming up. If you don't need them, then you're going to be ahead of that box or two come next season for sure. So smart shopping, I guess you could call it, to buy that. And, prices I'm seeing increasing too. So get out there and get it. And when you do get it, make sure it's federal premium. And like I say, shoot often, shoot lots, enjoy the range, and get ready for the upcoming seasons. And Mark Wiley, back to Mark. And Mark, I wanted to ask you too, if you had to pick the region of the state of Ohio, I don't know if we want to break it down. Yeah, we could probably break it down into our districts. We've got 5 here in Ohio. What do you think district came in as far as the biggest number of birds taken this year?
Well, our typical region that seems to be doing best in recent years is sort of east central Ohio, which is the layout of our districts. We've got District 1 in Central Ohio and 2 in Northwest, 3 in Northeast descent sort of progresses clockwise from there. So as I understood, if I recall my lines correctly, District 3 and District 4, which would be northeast Ohio and southeast Ohio, sort of divide up that east-central region that has really strong turkey numbers. But throughout eastern Ohio, throughout the eastern half of the state, you're going to find good turkey numbers in all those counties. So Districts 3 and Districts 4 are typically jostling with each other for top turkey harvest numbers each year.
And they've led the way that way, I think, for really, decades? When you think it's been a long time. It really has.
They have, yeah. It's there's no real mystery with wild turkey habitat. They're a forest bird. They require a certain amount of forest cover within a landscape, and you're going to find that in Districts 3, District 4, and down your way, Southwest Ohio, District 5. You're going to find the greatest amounts of that cover type. Now, wild turkey, you can find them in all 88 counties, even our most highly agricultural counties
Absolutely.
in west central and northwest Ohio. So they're an adaptable bird, but in those regions, you're going to find them most closely tied to areas with forest cover. And you're not going to find the population size that you will find in eastern Ohio and southwest Ohio. Yeah, in those agricultural areas.
We've got a great division of wildlife here in Ohio. I put you guys up against anywhere, and I guarantee you're probably going to come out within the top 3, if not number 1. And I'm not just saying that because you're on here. I've said that for years. There's divisions of wildlife out here that their states, they hate them. They don't like them at all. And we've got people that really are happy and love our division here in Ohio. And that coupled with the NWTF, Mark, I mean, you guys work hand in hand a lot with them, and they really have been helpful, too, with projects here in the state for turkey, haven't they?
They have, and that's been a long history, including back when turkey restoration was very active within the state. The partnership with the National Wild Turkey Federation was key in a lot of those efforts and remains very important. We talked about the northeast zone up in the northeast corner of the state. NWTF was instrumental in getting that research done. They helped us purchase equipment to monitor nesting hens. They helped us in any number of other ways. So yes, that partnership is very important, and we do work closely with them. I'll meet with the state board this weekend and give them an update on the spring season. They are a knowledgeable bunch of guys, a passionate bunch of guys and women, doing a number of wonderful things in the state to promote both habitat, turkey habitat, wildlife habitat, and hunting within the state of Ohio.
Is that going to be a meeting in person?
As far as I know, yes. It has been. We have not met. I have not met with these folks for more than a year.
Yeah.
So as far as I understand, under very specific requirements, we will be able to meet in person for the first time in well over a year. So I'm excited about that. I wish that I was bringing these guys better turkey numbers. But as I mentioned, they are a knowledgeable group. I fully expect when I present them with our population indices showing that we are in a dip currently, both in turkey number and hunter number, that they're going to want to, they're not going to dwell on that. They're immediately going to want to know how we fix this. And that's a great mentality to have in your state board members.
Absolutely. Well, it's already a success, my friend. It's a meeting in person for the first time, like you said, in over a year, so that's good. A couple other things real quick before we let you go. Have you any idea what the biggest wild turkey pound was? Has that ever been taken in Ohio? This is a protocol question.
Right, yes. That was so for those unfamiliar, and I'm guessing there's a lot of folks out there, your listeners are probably more familiar than I am. We used to check turkey in person, as we did with deer, and part of that was getting a weight and some other measurements on the birds,
etc.
Right. So we still have the hunter report spur length, and we utilize that data in our harvest information, but we no longer require a weight. But we still do have hunters call in, and they want to report a large bird harvested, and they want to know what the state record is. And where I typically direct them to the National Wild Turkey Federation webpage. There is an area there, or a specific area of their website where you can not only report your turkey and its measurements, but you can see how that turkey stacks up against other turkeys that have been reported in that state or even other states. So for folks interested in some of the records, I direct you to NWTF and their webpage. They've got a great page there with a lot of interesting information.
Can you imagine how good that next national NWTF convention is going to be when we get back to normal? That thing will be unbelievable.
I'm looking forward to that immensely. Certainly, it's not only is it a grand spectacle in itself, but I typically attend so that I can attend the National Wild Turkey Federation technical committee meeting, and I meet with my counterparts from all across the country and discuss turkey issues. That is a tremendously valuable meeting for many reasons, but for turkey management in the state. So I'm looking forward to that very much, Jerry.
Well, get your reservations in early, and I'm not kidding you, because I got a feeling it's going to be tough booking because it is going to be crowded. People are going to be excited, and they're going to be wanting to get back down there for that, that's for sure. Two more questions, I promise. So. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying I hope so. I hope that's the case.
Well, fingers crossed, toes crossed, whatever else you can cross. No more gifts from any country, anywhere, and we might be able to get this accomplished and get the NWTF. I think if you rank these national conventions, them and DU, it's hard to top those two. I'm telling you, they know how to do a national convention. They both do. And people, I'll do a plug right now real quick for conservation groups. Join as many as you can. It's $30, $35 to be a member. The big thing, if you can pick out the one you enjoy the most or can help out the most because of your location where you are, is your time with the committees. If you could do a little bit of that with your membership, they love that time on the committee because they need all the help they can get, and they've suffered too with this year. I mean, my gosh, it's they've all survived, but I'll tell you what, membership and everything else and donations and no banquets, that's really a big driving part of their income, and without being able to hail them, it's really, really hurt them, there's no question. Two more questions, sir, and that's it, my friend. I promise we'll let you go. What about the trucker? They've been on our hunting schedule forever. Could that be a release bird here in Ohio and give people another opportunity to hunt a bird and enjoy a chucker hunt?
Certainly, yeah. It's a unique thing. We get questions like yours when folks see chucker in the regulations. There are no known wild chucker populations in the state. That is solely a release bird, and the existence of that regulation largely is as I understand it, folks that are in the field either releasing birds themselves or possibly cleaning up birds released on a dog training area or following a field trial that may have used chucker. So yeah, when you see that season in our regulation booklet, that's not to suggest you'll find wild chucker in the state of Ohio. You will not. But it's a regulation that's been in place for a while. As I mentioned, to sort of regulate those activities for cleaning up released birds.
Maybe we could do a release like we do so much for our pheasant releases that we do, and do a scheduled chucker release every year and give people an opportunity to hunt that for a little bit. That might be a thought. Something extra to hunt. And one other question, got some people out here too, and you look at it, some people are thinking, bird hunting here in Ohio is fading away, excluding turkey. That's a different species, but we're looking at quail, we're looking at grouse, and we're looking at pheasant as those primary upland birds, if you will. And people are thinking, what's going on? We're not, seasons are changing. We changed our grass season, we changed our quail season. We've got our pheasant releases that are popular. Pheasant range is coming back. We're having success with that. But then we throw in the mix that we talked about earlier, the aging hunter, and the aging hunter gets hit the hardest on the upland hunts because that's where they need the legs, and that's where the legs go first with the older hunter, and that's the first type of hunting that they give up, that they don't do anymore. So with all that coupled together, where do you think we are with the health of our upland hunting, bird hunting, if you will, here in Ohio right now, here in 2021, Mark? What do you think?
Yeah, you make some excellent points, and unfortunately we are seeing numbers of grouse hunters, numbers of quail hunters, and even numbers of pheasant hunters decline pretty steadily, more so than we're seeing, as you and I talk, with turkey hunting, and declining to much smaller numbers, where our estimates of hunters in pursuit of bobwhite or rough grouse are just in a couple thousand each year. And that's largely driven by the availability of the species. There's no denying that the quail numbers, grouse numbers are extremely low in the state. Hunting opportunities similarly low. And it's important to point out that for all of those species that you mentioned, it is a habitat issue. Specifically for grouse, a lack of young forest habitat. Even though we've got some excellent forested areas in the state, if they don't have that key component to grouse habitat, which is young forest cover, you just can't expect grouse to persist in those areas. And similarly with bobwhite quail, only in the more agricultural areas of the state, southwest Ohio, if you've got farmland that doesn't have those brushy fence rows and doesn't have, some old fields or CRP where those birds actively nest, you just can't expect to sustain bobwhite populations. And it's not it's not an issue where we're pointing the finger at the landowner or trying to place blame with landowners or whatever the case might be. Landowners do what's best for themselves, for management of their property, and it's just a gradual change in Ohio's landscape and the way that we manage land, the way that we harvest timber, the way that we operate our farms. Decades ago, the way that we managed land was very beneficial to those birds that you mentioned, pheasant, quail, and grouse. Today, the way that we manage land is not as beneficial, and in many cases might even be detrimental. We're fortunate that we do have folks who are very passionate about wildlife management and management of those species. Sadly, their efforts have not been enough to increase populations of those birds. In some cases, they might be sustaining those birds in some areas. I ran some quail surveys this morning in Highland County and heard a few whistling birds. It was like music to my ears. Although I would have certainly liked to have heard more whistling males this morning.
Well, let me help your quail story along a little bit, my friend. I'm out in rural Butler County, out around the Dartown, Oxford, Ohio area. My quail whistles this spring have been zero, sadly to say.
Oh, very sorry to hear that, Jerry. It's and unfortunately, if this continues without some change, we're gonna have a generation of landowners who aren't even aware that the bobwhite whistle is missing from the landscape. If they didn't grow up with that whistle, currently a little bit like we talked about the average age of the Ohio hunter, the average age of the Ohio landowner is probably getting older and older as well. And right now we've got a group that probably remember well when Ohio had really strong bobwhite populations, and whether they're interested in hunting those birds or not, I think there is some nostalgia associated with hearing the whistle of the bobwhite in the spring and in the summer. So we'd like to see that return, certainly.
Absolutely. I'll hear them. It's just I've not heard any yet, so I've still got fingers crossed, that's for sure. And we do have a bit of a habitat here where we can support a few quail, so hopefully we'll hear them. And I agree with you about farming practices, too. It's a bit tough to turn these big combines with fence rows. There's no question about that. And a farmer needs to utilize every acre that he can for that farm. So, that's for sure. The priority is to have that farm there, and the benefits on the side or what it can produce for cover. For upland, birds, rabbits, the entire thing, all wildlife is supported with that type of thing. But like we say, and we've said for a long time, it's true. If you don't have the habitat, you don't have to worry about the food because there's not going to be anything there to feed anyway. So habitat's number one, no question. I want to thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Summer wellness, you are a summer poult update. We'll do that maybe sometime in August that we always like to do, and then we can get ready and start promoing the upcoming fall season. You'll be getting really wound up come August like the rest of us hunters are. We get excited then for September, don't we?
We do, and I look forward to talking to you and Sydney again, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Summer well, and have fun with those little guys, okay?
I will. Thank you.
Take care.
See ya. There you go, Mark Wiley, a wildlife biologist for Ohio. We got your update. We've wrapped up this turkey season for you here in Ohio. Sydney, you got anything to add real quick to this show?
Oh, absolutely. We have a update.
Do it, my friend.
We have a update in reference to, well, I guess we can go up, throw a little basketball at you again. Currently, right now, the Bucks are winning against the Nets, 49-46, and this is a must-win for the Bucks. So, just FYI there. And then I always like to preach about safety, or at least doing all these changes to the season. It doesn't mean you cannot still enjoy the hunting season. So still, there's plenty of fun out there to be had. I can't just let you guys have it all. So here's some things we can do as we approach the season, specifically in smaller household groups or closer to home. Here's some recommendations to lower your risk of contracting or spreading COVID-19 during the hunting season. Limit the number of people in your hunting party. Hunting alone or with only a few members of immediate family or household, relatives may be the safest option at this point, even though I know we have a lot of friends. I know that. Ask other members of the hunting party to quarantine for 14 days prior to the season, just to minimize some of the chances of bringing the virus to them. Hunt close to home if possible, so you don't bring the virus maybe from a state to another state or another area to another area. Use the Mayo Clinic COVID-19 tracking map if you would, want to just look up where the high areas of COVID are at. That would help. Again, Mayo Clinic COVID-19 tracking map, for those that don't know what that is. It'll basically just help you to kind of see the hot spots. Like, we might not want to go this far. Look at how much red that is or how much orange that is. Avoid large gatherings in cabins, bonfires, restaurants, or taverns. Avoid shared buffet meals if you can, even though some of that food is just that darn good, alright? I know, I understand. Sleep at home or in separate hotel rooms when you do. Avoid the bunk room or cabin sleeping arrangements if possible, where physical distancing and masking overnight may be difficult. And avoid indoor outdoor crowds if you really can do that. Of course, wear a mask if you would like to, or if you haven't had a vaccine. And the hands are a big way of spreading germs. Carry and use hand sanitizer if you can. And of course, the 6 feet rule, that doesn't hurt either. And please, please, if you have any symptoms of COVID, please stay at home if you're not feeling well, because we don't want it. I'm just going to be honest with you. We don't want that. As my youngest child would say, we don't want it. So we don't want that. And just it doesn't more avoid high touch surfaces, doors, handles, many places where people may be doing that. But that was it. And back to you, Mr. Jerry.
Thank you, Sydney. And that update that Sydney applies to hunting trips also works for fishing trips, too. So keep that in mind. We've got this virus under control would be a better way to put it, but it's by no means over with. So all of those points are important. And what your vaccine is very important to do. There's no question about that. And what that's going to do is keep you from getting seriously ill and keeping you from being in a hospital with this issue. So by all means, consider, if you've not gotten it, consider getting that vaccine. Don't forget, we drop a new one of these every Thursday for you, 8 to 9, and we continue to bring you. We hope you enjoy the content, the hunting and fishing content we've got here. As we roll through the months here, as we get closer to August, we'll start switching that team over a little bit to the hunting side, because before you know it, those September 1st seasons are going to be upon us, that's for sure. So get out and enjoy the outdoors. Have a good day enjoying it. Make sure you pick us up every week right about this time. Take care. We'll see you next week. So long.
Troubadour.